In the quiet residential streets of Easton, Bristol, the morning of June 28, 1967, began like any other. Neighbors of 75-year-old Louisa Dunne expected to see her on her doorstep, a familiar presence in the community. But as the hours passed, an unusual silence hung over her home on Britannia Road. Concern grew, culminating in a neighbor's decision to check on her. The discovery that followed shattered the tranquility, plunging the community into a mystery that would endure for nearly 6 decades. Louisa Dunne, a beloved local resident, was found dead in her front room, her life brutally taken. What happened within those walls would become one of the United Kingdom's most enduring and perplexing cold cases. The scene discovered by police officers arriving at Britannia Road that summer morning painted a grim picture. Louisa Dunne had been subjected to a horrifying attack. The post-mortem examination revealed she had been and died from strangulation and asphyxiation, with injuries to her face, eyes, and neck, indicating a high degree of violence. It was clear she had experienced immense pain and fear in her final moments. The initial police investigation launched by Bristol Constabulary was immediate and massive in its scope. Detectives moved quickly, taking a staggering 1,300 witness statements and meticulously recording over 8,000 house-to-house records. They meticulously searched for clues, and among the crucial, albeit limited forensic evidence recovered, were traces of semen from intimate swabs and the skirt Louisa Dunne had been wearing, along with a partial palm print found on an upstairs bedroom window. The hunt for Louisa Dunne's killer became an unprecedented endeavor for its time. Recognizing the significance of the palm print, officers undertook a monumental task, collecting palm prints from over 19,000 men and boys within a 2.4-kilometer radius of Mrs. Dunne's home. This included individuals with previous convictions for burglary or sexual offenses, homeless individuals, and even soldiers absent without leave. Expert assistance was brought in from New Scotland Yard to aid with this colossal fingerprinting operation. Despite the sheer scale of this effort, the primary suspect remained elusive. The reason, a cruel twist of fate, would only become apparent many decades later. The perpetrator, Ryland Headley, then 34 years old, lived just beyond the perimeter of this extensive painstaking search, a mere 2.6 kilometers away. Unconvicted of any crime at the time of Louisa Dunne's murder, he slipped through the net, leaving the case to eventually grow cold. The years that followed were marked by silence for the Dunne family, a period of profound grief compounded by the agonizing absence of justice. Louisa's granddaughter recounted the devastating impact the unsolved crime had on her family, describing how her mother fell, very ill, and never truly recovered. The brutal murder cast a long shadow, forcing family members to suppress their emotions for decades due to the stigma attached to such a horrifying crime. The unresolved nature of the case only intensified their suffering. Meanwhile, Headley's life continued, moving from Bristol to Ipswich. By the early 1970s, he was working as a railway machinist. However, beneath this veneer of ordinary life, a disturbing pattern of criminal behavior emerged. Between 1973 and 1978, Headley confessed to committing 10 burglaries in Ipswich. More disturbingly, in October 1977, he was convicted of 2 elderly women in Ipswich in separate incidents. These attacks bore chilling similarities to the murder of Louisa Dunne. In both instances, Headley broke into the homes of his victims, one in her late 70s, the other in her mid-80s, threatening them with violence before carrying out the He was identified in these cases after leaving fingerprints at one of the scenes, leading to a new, smaller-scale fingerprinting operation by Suffolk police that finally brought him to justice for these later crimes. Initially sentenced to life imprisonment for these rapes, his term was later reduced to 7 years on appeal, and he served approximately 2 years. Despite these later convictions and the forensic breakthroughs that were yet to come, the 1967 murder of Louisa Dunne remained unsolved. The original evidence, including the crucial skirt and swabs, was meticulously stored for decades within the archives of Avon and Somerset Police Headquarters. 20 boxes of materials patiently awaiting the future. A significant, albeit seemingly minor event in 2012, would prove pivotal, though its importance would not be realized for many years. Following an unconnected incident, Ryland Headley's DNA profile was added to the national database. Crucially, when asked to provide palm prints at this time, he declined, citing arthritis, thus preventing an earlier potential match with the 1967 crime scene. The turning point arrived in 2023. Avon and Somerset Police's Major Crime Review Team initiated a fresh examination of the vast preserved case files of Louisa Dunne's murder. The advances in forensic science since 1967 offered a new glimmer of hope. Among the items selected for re-examination was the blue skirt Louisa Dunne had been wearing on the night she was attacked. Forensic scientists were able to obtain a full DNA profile from the semen found on the skirt, and when this profile was compared to the national database, it yielded a match: Ryland Headley. The probability of the DNA belonging to anyone else was astronomically low. This DNA breakthrough ignited a renewed intense investigation. Detectives revisited the original evidence, including the partial palm print recovered from Louisa Dunne's window in 1967. With Headley now in custody and his palm prints taken, four independent fingerprint experts meticulously analyzed the decades-old print. All four unequivocally concluded that the palm print belonged to Ryland Headley, providing a second powerful piece of forensic evidence linking him directly to the crime scene. On November 19, 2024, nearly 58 years after the murder, Ryland Headley, now 92, was arrested at his home in Ipswich. Later the same day, he was formally charged with the and murder of Louisa Dunne. He appeared via video link before Bristol Magistrates Court the following day, then at Bristol Crown Court, and was remanded in custody ahead of his trial. The trial of Ryland Headley began on June 16, 2025, at Bristol Crown Court. Headley pleaded not guilty to both charges, setting the stage for a compelling and emotionally charged legal battle that would revisit events from nearly 6 decades prior. The prosecution presented a formidable case built upon the convergence of cutting-edge forensic science and the diligently preserved evidence of the original 1967 investigation. The jury heard compelling testimony about the DNA evidence, with forensic experts stating that the profile obtained from Louisa Dunne's skirt was 1 billion times more likely to belong to Ryland Headley. This scientific certainty provided an irrefutable link. Furthermore, the court was presented with a matched palm print, a silent witness from the crime scene, now definitively tied to the defendant. The prosecution also successfully argued for the inclusion of bad character evidence: Headley's 1977 convictions for the rapes of 2 other elderly women in Ipswich. They argued that these later offenses demonstrated a chilling pattern of behavior and a clear tendency for Headley to break into elderly women's homes, subject them to and threaten violence, echoing the circumstances of Louisa Dunne's murder. Given the immense passage of time, most of the original witnesses from 1967 had passed away. Therefore, the prosecution relied on the meticulously recorded written accounts taken at the time, which were admitted as hearsay evidence, a necessity given the unique circumstances. These original statements included neighbors recalling hearing a muffled scream followed by crying on the night of Louisa Dunne's death. One trial witness who had pronounced Mrs. Dunne dead in 1967 also gave evidence. Throughout the trial, Headley himself chose not to give evidence in his own defense. After deliberating, on June 30, 2025, 58 years after Louisa Dunne's body was found, the jury returned their verdict. Ryland Headley was found guilty of both the rape and murder of Louisa Dunne. The verdict marked a historic moment, solving what is believed to be the UK's longest-running cold case to reach a trial and conviction. On the following day, Ryland Headley appeared before Bristol Crown Court for sentencing. The Honourable Sir Derek Sweeting delivered a powerful and condemning address. He spoke of Louisa Dunne as a vulnerable, elderly lady living alone, and described Headley's actions as exploiting that vulnerability. The judge stated that the violation of her home, her body, and ultimately her life, was a pitiless and cruel act by a depraved man, carried out with complete disregard for human life and dignity. He highlighted the enduring, devastating impact on Mrs. Dunne's family, who had waited decades for justice. Considering all the aggravating features of the case, the judge sentenced Ryland Headley to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 20 years. Addressing Headley directly, Judge Sir Derek Sweeting said,
"You will never be released, you will die in prison."
In the wake of Headley's conviction, police forces in Suffolk and Norfolk have also begun reviewing other unsolved murders and from the 1970s and 1980s, particularly those involving elderly women, as the long shadow of Ryland Headley's past continues to be examined. The conviction of Ryland Headley not only brought a measure of justice to Louisa Dunne's family after more than half a century, but it also underscored the profound advancements in forensic science and the unwavering commitment of law enforcement.